Now, some of the folks I work with at Fish and Game came over yesterday and helped me move this wing out of the basement down here to the paint booth. It took about 10 minutes to move it, and then it took another 45 minutes to visit and stuff. Well, we got it moved down here to the paint booth now where I'm ready to start working on the paint, and I've got it laid out with my rotisserie, my rotator on this end, and it's sitting on a sawhorse on the other end. And we've just got it sitting flat right now because I need to do some work on it, masking things that I don't want the poly brush and poly spray to go on. These are the wires that come out for the landing light and the nav light. I'm going to mask that off so they don't get all sprayed. And of course the tubes here for the pedostatic system, and I don't want to get poly brush and poly spray on these spars and on the drag struts. And then I don't want it to get on here on the flap and aileron hinges. Then I've got gussets and the attach points for the jury struts, pedo tube, and of course the attach fittings for the wing struts. I don't want any paint to get down in this landing light or into the fuel tank bay. So I've got some masking to do on this. I'm going to have to turn it over and mask out the fuel tank bay. I don't want to get that stuff in there. I don't even want to get the finish color in there. So I've got a lot of work to do before we're ready to start painting. We've got it set up here in the paint booth, and I think I'm going to leave this big door open for now because it is like a sauna in here. We've had cool weather and rainy weather, a few breaks in between, but mostly cool and wet weather. Yesterday it warmed up. It was nice getting this thing down here. The weather was good for that and moving all my stuff around. But then the thunder showers started coming in. And we might get some this afternoon. The forecast says for the next few days we might get thunder showers. There's a lot of moisture in the air and on the ground, and we've got sunshine hitting pretty hard here, so there's a lot of thermal activity. Might get some more thunder showers this afternoon. But this thing warms up like a sauna in here when the sun shines. That might be a good thing when I do the finish paint on here, but for doing the poly brush and the poly spray, that's not a good thing, because if it's too hot in here, that stuff doesn't go on very well. It comes out of the gun like cotton candy, and it flashes out too fast. I like to have it cool, so we'll probably wind up doing most of the poly spray and poly brush work in the mornings or in the evenings when it cools off. I'll get this side done, and then I'll get some help, tip the wing over, and there's really not much to do on the top side except, well, I've got to do the fuel tank bay. There's the bracket for the aileron pulley on the top that needs to be masked, but that's it on the top. The fuel tank bay is the biggest thing, and that's going to be a pretty good challenge to mask that off. But anyway, that's what my job is today, right now, is to start doing the masking on here to get ready to put the poly brush on. So the first thing we'll do, actually what the book says to do, the first thing is to go over this with a mist coat of reducer, which will soften up the poly brush that's already on here. And then we'll go on with a mist coat of poly brush, and then go on with 2 coats of poly brush. And then we'll go with 3 cross coats of poly spray, and we've got to let those set up between coats of poly spray. And then that's got to set up for 3 or 4 days so that all the solvents get evaporated out of it before I put the finish coat on. Well, I guess I better get busy and start masking this thing off. Well, I got this bottom side masked. You can see right here where the wing spars come out, pedo lines come out, electric lines come out. I've got this anti-drag strut covered up. Hinges for the flaps and the ailerons. Here's where the jury struts attach, pedo tube. And we've got the strut attach points and grommets for where the aileron cables come through. Last thing that I've got to do is over here on this landing light. after cleaning that landing light up and getting all painted pretty inside and stuff. I don't want to get it all messed up with poly brush, poly spray, and even the finish coat. So I've got it all taped up inside, and I'm going to go ahead and put this box in there to make a hard spot so that the air pressure and stuff doesn't push in through the tape and blow the tape out. Well, now I need to get some help. And roll this wing over so I can do the top side. And there's only two things to do on the top side. I've got the one bracket for the pulley for the upper aileron control, and then we got the fuel tank bay to do. So I don't want to make a mess in there with a whole bunch of poly brush and poly spray. Got flies in here now. This is a pretty clean space. We got the blower out here that inflates this building or pressurizes this building, and that does pick up bugs and stuff and blows it in. But we've got the filters here on this clean room. It keeps them from coming into here. But because it's doggone hot, I've had the big door open down here while I was working in here. Even with it open, it's still pretty warm in here. Hey, squirrel, what are you looking for, huh? What are you doing? Well, I've got the two man doors down open on that end, but that doesn't leave much area for cross ventilation, but it helped. I have to get some fly strips or something to hang up in here to get the flies out of here. For some reason the doggone bug will fly around here just fine, but as soon as you spray paint on something, they'll land on it and then get stuck in it and make tracks and stuff as they try to wander around. So I'm going to go ahead and close this place up now, done here until I get some help. Maybe I'll go get my wife and see if she's coming. She's busy right now. I'm not going to bother her. Today was a big meat sale in town, and she went and bought a whole bunch of beef and pork and stuff and was getting it fixed up to put in the freezer for our winter's meat. So I'm not going to bother her tonight. My son's here. He's working on the car that he wrecked hitting the deer, so maybe I'll go get him and have him come and give me a hand. Well, it was cloudy, overcast, and cool for a while this morning, and I thought maybe I was going to be able to paint today, but it's hot now. Still a little bit cloudy, but blue sky and plenty of sunshine, and it's hot out here, let alone inside this little castle here. It warmed up. It must have been about 90 degrees or more inside here when I finally opened it up. I came out earlier and did a little bit when it was cool. Well, I got the bottom side of the wing done yesterday and the struts out here on the end, and I needed to do the fuel tank bay, so I've got it masked off now. What I did was I got a piece of the old fabric that came off the wing, and I cut it to fit, taped it in there, and I got tape here that had rib lacing through there, so it was punched for rib lacing, so I just run tape over all the holes for the rib lacing. I'm not going to spray in there too much. I probably want to get a little bit in there on the back edge on that false spar comes over the spar, and here where the leading edge goes over the spar, maybe a little bit underneath those ribs, but I don't really need much underneath there because those are going to be pretty well protected from the sunlight. Well, I got the landing light kind of half-assed done. I could see that this wasn't going to work as well as I'd hoped. Well, I went in there and taped everything off inside there, and then I went ahead and got this cardboard and I stuffed it around there and got it sitting in there so that it doesn't blow in there, so it doesn't get pressure in there. Probably want to get a little bit of silver on the inside edges around there because that will be out in the sunlight. Even though it's got plexiglass on it, it'll be out and be exposed. But I can put that on there with a brush and stuff and kind of coat that with a brush once I get everything else all done. This was the only other thing on the top here, and that didn't take much there. This is all going to be cut out, so I don't really care too much about that. This is the opening where the aileron cable comes out for the top aileron control, and it doesn't matter whether that gets painted. Even if it gets finish painted, it doesn't really matter. And then this is a little gusset that I made out of vinyl to go down here where this turnbuckle beats on this rear spar. So I've got timbers up here going across frameworks that I built to keep this thing from collapsing on everything if the power goes out and the building collapses. Anyway, that's pretty hefty timber there. That's a full 4 inches wide and full 3 inches thick. So that should be plenty stout enough for that. trying to figure out how to hoist that, how to hold that up. And what I wound up doing was I went into the hangar and dug out a length of 1/8-inch aircraft cable. I've got quite a bit of that. In fact, I gave probably 20 pounds of it away this winter to get it out of the hangar. To go through a lot of that, changing that for the aileron cables and for the water rudder cables and stuff like that when they start to show a little wear on them. So anyway, I had a length of that, and I brought it out here, cut it, and I put a couple of Necopress sleeves on there. I doubled them up on there and made a loop around that timber. I did the same thing on the timber. I found another timber down and I put down there, and I did the same thing on it. I've got a loop of cable on it. Then I made a little loop of cable to go here, the aileron and the flap hinges. So I'll get something to hoist that up and then tie those off to that beam up above, and I'll be able to raise it up higher. I can always raise my gun up and shoot this edge here from the ground. You know, I'm being 6 foot tall and I've got fairly long arms, so I can always reach up higher. But getting down low to get that leading edge, if it's down too close to the ground, might be kind of a challenge. And I want to make sure that leading edge gets a good coat of paints on it and stuff. That's what takes all the wear and tear going through the air. Well, anyway, I'm just about ready to hoist this wing up. I think I'm going to do 2 more things. I'm going to go across with some wax and paint remover and clean this face of the wing up, as it's had a lot of handling, a lot of fingers and stuff going over it and stuff. Then I think I'm going to go find some wire, and I'm going to hook on to the end of the wing down there where it's attached to the wing spars and run it out to a ground point on the ground so that wing is grounded. And I noticed when I was wiping this thing down with the Prep-Sol before, and especially with the tack rag, that it built up a lot of static electricity. And static electricity is going to attract dust and bugs and all kinds of crap I don't want in the paint. So we'll get this thing all set up today. Like I said, it's too hot to try to do any painting in here today. I've got the polybrush in here in a can in the clean room, and the temperature of the polybrush in the can is going to be too warm to use it, and it's too hot in here to do anything in here. With this closed up, it's going to heat up to over 100 degrees in here with everything closed up in here. Well, I better get busy and get it done, I guess, and maybe then the first thing in the morning I can come out and start putting the first coats of polybrush on. Well, I think I finally got this thing ready to paint. All we'll do now is wait till the morning when it's cool, and then I can come out here and paint it. I got it hanging up. I think I showed that earlier. I made hangers out of 1/8-inch aileron cable, or steel cable, aircraft cable, to hang it up. And then I've got string between them as I made gradual lifts to get it up there where I wanted it. I've got everything taped off. Wanted to ground that because I noticed there was a lot of static building up on everything when I was washing it down with Prep-Sol and stuff. Well, I was looking for some wire to use to ground it with. And a wire feed welder, a lot of times you wind up wasting a lot of wire, especially at the end of the roll where it won't feed out anymore. And I've had wraps of that hanging around here for a long time. Of course, I couldn't find it now. I probably got tired of moving it around, getting it out of the way, and wound up throwing it away. But I had another length of that stainless steel aircraft cable, 1/8-inch cable. I put a terminal end on that and bolted it in with one of the bolts holding that framework on there. And I've got it running outside. I've hooked it into a stake driven into the ground for a ground. So hopefully that'll eliminate the static off of that. I just washed down this side with Prep-Sol. And I went and dug out an insect killer, a zapper, hung up in here for overnight. Because I've had this thing open during the daytime the last couple of days because it's gotten so hot in here, we've got quite a few bugs in here. There have been flies and other flying insects in here. Some of them get sucked in with that fan out there that inflates, that pressurizes this building, and get pushed in, although they should stay in that other end there. But I did have that man door open between so that the air would flow out here when it was raining and stuff, and keep this end of the building inflated pretty hard. Anyway, I've got this side Prep-Sol'd, washed down with Prep-Sol. I'll need to go over it with a tack cloth. I'll probably sweep the floor in the morning And then the last thing I need to do is to change the desiccant in my air lines. So I've got water-free air coming out. Anyway, that's enough for today. It's starting to cool off a little bit, but by the time it cools off enough to work in here, it'll be too dark to see anything, so we'll start in the morning. I should be able to get 2 coats of polybrush on it tomorrow, and then we can go from there with the poly spray after that.